my draft physics video. Looks like comments again or something like that maybe. Well, I'll probably be back to pick the camera up actually. So yeah, I did watch 2 minutes or whatever, 1 minute 30 seconds. Maybe I'll watch that much every few days of today's video. And the first 2 minutes is just, yes, a critique because I accidentally, inadvertently typoed, by saying the number of radiuses away from the sun. I said radians instead of radiuses. And, ooh, what a crime. Where that happens like in every single Susskind, lecture I've ever seen. He's done that more than once. And, I don't even want to talk about what he does with plus and minus signs. I mean, he just throws them around like, changes them all over the place. But anyway, just such a, this is the best you've got, huh? Wow. So anyway, this is this Jerk-O-Lantern guy. So one of his comments is, because you can never have enough weak girly boy evidence of something. So he posts a link to evidence that is exactly that, weak girly science. I mean, it's a fluff article. Just, the exact kind of science you just say, well, that's so bad. How can they think that this is good evidence of something? I mean, and it's insanely poorly written article. I can't seem to get the image go away there. So anyway, it says Einstein ring or Einstein cross. And, these images are just, this standard stock crap where there's no explanation in here anywhere. And so let's just look at the images and let them speak for themselves. So the Einstein ring versus the Einstein cross. Now, can somebody give me the mathematical reason why you would have such a phenomenon? Like why something would replicate an image, of little circles, like there are circles, and nothing blurs, and nothing, somehow the gravity isn't circular for some reason. It doesn't create multiple images, where an Einstein's ring is supposed to be multiple images. And yet these aren't multiple images, they're images in swirls. Well, why is it swirling? What sense does that make? But they always talk about how everything has to be in alignment, and it's really not alignment, it's about distances. And so the alignment doesn't have to be like you, the lensing object, and then the other object in a perfectly straight line in the sense of lined up with your mass. It just has to be on the right plane, so at this distance. And so it can be off, and somehow that'll excuse you for having crooked circles, circles that are much longer this way than this way, obviously. And obviously we couldn't have alignment if it was tilted or something. You can't do it that way. So it's not allowed to be skewed or tilted. But what theory? Look at the size of the object supposed to be doing the lensing, and how many radiuses away from that is this lensing gravity. And this is a huge bend in the light. It's not a minor bend, it's huge. So this is huge gravity way out here, this many radians away from the object. So what is this object? It's obviously not a sun, some kind of other spectacularly dense thing, and so it's a galaxy. Now, where's the principle involved in terms of a galaxy having super strong gravity even on the outside of a galaxy? There's probably not enough gravity to pull a baseball in. If I threw a baseball next to a galaxy and I just threw it at, say, 5 miles an hour, it wouldn't get pulled into the galaxy. The gravity is incredibly weak out here. If not, the whole galaxy would collapse on itself. It'd be pulled right in. This can't be logically made sense of. So again, we're talking about the same exact mechanics create this and create let me click on the famous Einstein cross, which is bullshit. So the same problem. Look how far away from this object these things are. That's at least 3 diameters, so it's at least 6, 7 radiuses, 10 radiuses maybe to get to there. Why would there be all that gravity way that far away from the object? It would have to be some kind of super dense matter or something we've never seen before, because regular matter won't do that. So again, so what's the theoretical basis for why this is all distorted and this isn't? Because it's supposed to be created by the same basic phenomenon. So why the difference? And how do you have this much gravity that far away from the object? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, it's just, and there's so many things to this whole lensing thing. What Einstein was famous for wasn't predicting lensing, So again, it's more, they exaggerate the truth. What was different about Einstein, you could do lensing with Newton's theory. All you had to do was establish that photons had a mass. And that was the tricky part, right? I mean, how do you establish the mass of a photon? And clearly I would argue that the traditional way they're going to do it is based on how much the photon, how much energy it imparts. And so they can only do that by figuring out how much it can move an electron or something. And then they're doing it based on what they think a photon is, which is the minimum 2 tons in the photon. Maybe there's 3, maybe 4. They don't have the real science to slice photons this thin. So how can they even get an accurate description of its actual mass? You have to have its mass to do the math. You have to establish it. You have to give it a mass, so you can give it a momentum. A mass times velocity. So anyway, so you can do that with Newton. And the only thing Einstein added was, he says the photons are time dilated. So photons, no matter where they're going, somehow are time dilated? I mean, part of the theory says time dilation happens when you have velocity. But it seems that velocity is irrelevant as long as you're in gravity. Then that's some sort of extra velocity. Even though it's not a frame, so to speak. It's not really a moving body. Somehow just being in it without moving means you have a velocity sufficient for time dilation to kick in. So Einstein's argument is that the photon is in the gravity twice as long. So that's how Einstein came up with more opportunity for lensing, because he doubled the amount of time the photon is in the gravity by claiming the photon is time dilated. Now, if that makes sense to you people, okay. I mean, I can't say. To me, on the face of it, it sounds contrived and sounds like a crazy manipulation, and but that's what you're arguing. This is well established as a fact that this is how it works. And again, Einstein would never say this was possible. This was never part of anything Einstein would say, oh yeah, that'll happen. His theory was that the Einstein ring would be a tiny thing right next to the sun. So that's another thing. When I've seen them do simulations for black holes in Einstein rings, the ring is tiny, a tiny little sliver, because the difference in the gravity is too great, between here and here, and so the bending is not consistent with the object, so you can't have any graduated bending. You can't have hundreds or thousands or billions or millions of miles. So here, this ring is huge, in terms of its depth, and so that's the diameter of the object, which is, by the inverse square law, there's a 4 times difference between the gravity here and the gravity here. So how do you make sense out of that? You got a 4 times difference in the strength of the gravity, and you're looking at the same object from the same location. How is that possible? 4 times difference in the strength of the gravity, and looking at the same object. It makes sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. Not even close to sense. And so this is their strong evidence. It's their evidence you can't possibly question without being labeled some kind of crank or antiist or a fool. You're a fool to say you don't get it. You know, you're foolish not to buy into it. And then you go to the Wikipedia page on lensing, and it's, you know, especially the Einstein ring, and it's laughable. It's so thin, you know, in content, and it talks like dark matter is a fact. It's not, you know, it's not a theory of dark matter. No, it is. Lensing proves that it exists. That's how they talk in the article. Obviously it exists, and this is how they measure how much of it there is. They see how much lensing there is, and then they say that's how much dark matter there has to be. And you're not allowed to say that sounds contrived. Isn't that convenient? You know, you just spread dark matter wherever you want to. So for that Newton's ring, we just spread a bunch of dark matter and we don't finish the circle because that, you know, not enough dark matter there. So we just put dark matter in a little loop for an arbitrary reason, you know, to justify saying it's lensing, when the math says it can't be lensing if you have any kind of realistic number about how heavy that object is, because it can't produce strong enough gravity to bend light at that distance. It's impossible. A galaxy, even on its edges, again, the fringes of a galaxy, galaxies are full of matter that's not even complete. There's lots of empty space in a galaxy, a huge amount of empty space. It's a very non-dense object. It can't possibly have strong gravity on its circumference, let alone 8, 10, 15 diameters away from its circumference. There's no chance it has light bending capacity there. I mean, it's pathetic, frankly. So anyways, I watched a Walter Lewin video, and it really disappointed me. I kind of wanted to make a video to him, but he's getting old, and I know, it's, you know, you know, losing grip, touch, whatever, focus. But it was on the eclipse, and he was talking about the 1919 experiment, and how this all verifies, and blah, blah, blah. And then he made some comment to some guy asked him a question about the sun's corona and how far away you have to be. How far do you have to be away from the sun's corona to be able to see a lensed object? And he gives him this glib reply. He says, Google it. You can't Google that exactly. I mean, I tried. You know, you put in how far do you have to be from the sun's corona, but you're going to get a lot of results, and you know, you're going to have to do a lot of looking through them to find the answer. But he said it's been established for 100 years, for over 100 years. Established for over 100. It's well settled science. That's what he said. I don't think they even knew what the corona was made out of 100 years ago. So I mean, his comment was kind of just wrong, and it just, you know, this is just confirmation bias. That's all this is. I mean, these people are fanatics. They're zealots for this theory, and that's it. I mean, the guy wasn't even challenging it. He was just asking a question that just mentioned the idea of the corona, and it seemed like Professor Lewin was so defensive, you know, because, oh, well, you start talking about corona, you might mention scatter. You might mention the fact that it might be some particles that are deflecting light. And we don't want to have that conversation. No, 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 no. That's verboten. And that's all it seems like. Like, I'm just going to avoid that question altogether, because I don't even want to talk about the fact that bright suns have a bunch of particles flying out of them that we know diffract light. I mean, it's pretty bad. So, Jerk-o-lantern, you think that's your strong evidence? That's your Schwarzenegger evidence? That mush? I mean, really? You really believe it so strongly that you'll insult me or anybody else who says it doesn't make any logical sense? Einstein cross, Einstein ring. Exactly the same phenomenon, the same exact lens fundamentally. What is different between those two lenses? Why would something give you 4 perfect images, and why would the other one give you 2 messy, sloppy, right-lefty thingies, swirling thingies? I mean, my explanation is that these things you're seeing, they're explosions, they're shock waves, they're gas and suns still on fire. They're remnants of a galaxy, the pieces of a galaxy. That's what they are. You know, they're what they look like, a smoke ring. Something blew up, and usually blows up in a, you know, spherical kind of way. That's the other thing, you know, gravity is rock solid spherical. So anytime you see one of these lensed images that doesn't match left to right, you know, I'm saying they can be off-center, but they're not spheres. Even if you canted them on a wrong angle, which shouldn't even be possible to see them then, but even if you did that, they'd still have to have an oblong, they'd have to follow certain rules, you know, of distortion. And these don't even have symmetry. They lack symmetry. It's one of the fundamental things it's got to create is symmetry. They don't even have that. This gravity forces symmetry. So anyway, really annoying people. Okay. So there's any Jerk-o-lantern post another link. Not that anyone here gives a shit at this point, but here's a video explaining why you are fucking wrong about Michelson-Morley. So it's to some person reading a script, you know, that doesn't speak very good English. So it's not it's not really an easy listen. And it's a Michelson-Morley setup with a 1 foot long distance. So again, how much do you think that can show you? I mean, that's like doing the single slit experiment and putting the target a foot away. You can't see the single slit pattern that way. You can't do the double slit pattern that way. You have to have it at least 2 meters away, and usually even more, to get a good view of the pattern, to see it. The same is true for Newton's rings. It's a subtle divergence, and you have to give it enough time to diverge to be able to see it. And a foot isn't nearly enough distance. So he's saying he's proved something. I'm fucking wrong, and this is his evidence. It's nothing as evidence. It's zero. It's not evidence of what you think it is, because you don't even understand how the phenomenon works. Michelson-Morley was over 18 meters, I think, of distance. I think, when you add up the mirrors. Might have been more, I'm not sure. A lot of distance. You know, Michelson. Everybody does say Michelson, so I mean, I still got the Piro thing in my head, but everybody says Michelson. You know, so Piro's full of shit. So I, you know, what do you want me to, you know, I mean, I think it's an important, there's an important phenomenon that happens. So again, I'm not saying interferometers don't work as vibration sensors. Of course they do. The argument is what's causing the effect. What's doing this? And to me it seems, just like in a 2-slit experiment, you can accept some kind of, I think, silly notion that after this whole process of going all these ways, that these photons somehow, when the last one goes through the diffraction gradient at the very end, and the other one went through it 18 meters ago, and the two beams are somehow meet together, that somehow the photons interact with each other. Or you can figure that the process is that the last beam reflects off the mirror at the same time the other beam is going through the mirror. So they're both in the same material substance at the same time. And that's when the interference, that's when they are forced to, in a sense, combine their phase differences. You know, exaggerate them. So again, it's just an argument about how you think it happens. You think that photons are in a field of something, and that the field is somehow communicating between the photons, when we have no evidence that photons will do that in any other circumstance. But you think they will do it, you know, in this circumstance. So I was thinking of doing some separate lights of, you know, beams of light, and just try different reflective tricks, you know, diffraction gradients, and see, you know, if I just take a mirror that's 45 both ways and just shine two beams and force them to go the same way, you know, hit the same spot, whether you can get a similar result. But that's the part, it's hard to get them, it's hard to combine them into one beam, you know, without using some sort of beam splitter, and then you're stuck with the diffraction problem. So again, he's saying I'm fucking wrong because I'm accepting the fact, established by tons and tons of experiments, that if you put light through a grid work of material substance, that it will be diffracted by slits. And if you have a whole bunch of little slits or a bunch of little holes, that the light going through those, the ones that don't hit the holes, the ones that goes in between the holes, will be diffracted. And you don't think that's a fact. Well, it is a fact. And you're so arrogant in being completely wrong. Alright, let's see. So this comment, I'll just read a piece of it and just say I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I have come to the conclusion that the conversation conservation of energy isn't a sticking point in your theory, as it isn't accounted for in the plug-hole accepted theory. So again, I don't even know what that means, but look, I'll do a little. Look, I've tried to explain this so many, you know, and look, there's certain detail, and you know, some people just don't want to pay attention to the details. You know, I understand some of that, but you know, you're just doing this as casual troll fun or something, so you don't feel any obligation to understand what you're ridiculing. But you know, as I've stated, everything that happens is just an interpretation of what it was. The only thing there is the field energy, the stuff moving the speed of light, and you can convert the force into something that has a frequency. That is, you can replace it in a sense with a different identity, but you can't remove it or eliminate it or destroy it. So a photon is still gravity. It's just that in most circumstances you're never going to put enough photons in one place to notice that the photons are required to maintain something's gravity. They're not going to be a significant percentage of the force, so you won't notice any gravity change. You won't notice that let's see how to say it. Alright, so how to even draw it. But so the point is they're always going. Stuff is always going this way and this way. And all you can really do is just change color, so to speak. You can convert something that was black going this way into something black going this way. That kind of thing. But there will be something else that took the other thing's place. So red will be going that way. So the black gets turned into a red, the red gets turned into a black, but there's still a thing. You see? So you can't undo gravity. Gravity is always there, but you can convert some percentage of the gravity into photons. Or you can convert it into magnetism in the sense that it's exactly the same amount of energy goes into the magnet. Let's say a non-magnet. I have a square and it's a non-magnet. The force comes in, the force goes out. The trick is that black force and red force goes in, and black force and red force comes out of the other side of the thing, and it's exactly the same. It's mixed up. There's no filtering. So it's not a magnet. But it's exactly the same amount of force, so it's the gravity. The only thing a magnet's doing is it's filtering it so all the reds come out this end and all black comes out this end. It's exactly the same amount of force as the gravity. It is the gravity. It's just that the gravity's now been filtered. So the red gravity's coming out one end and the black gravity's coming out the other end. But it's exactly the same amount of force. So the argument is when a photon interacts with something, it's still going to be acting, okay, as gravity. So in a sense, if you remove the photon, in the sense that you could remove it with all of its energy, that would be the same thing as removing gravity, blocking the gravity, so to speak, and having a body move. But that's always through absorption. So it has to absorb something to be moving. So it's the reflection argument is what I'm really getting to. And so it seems like, when, say if I say a photon hits something, I mean, maybe this is the conservation problem they're not getting. There's a perfect reflection. That is, this thing goes this way. It reflects 100% of the same energy. Same energy that hit the object, same energy leaves. Now the trick is that I'm also saying there's energy that goes into this thing. There's a conversion. And the conversion is there was an arrow going this way, and it got reversed also. It reflected. So the reflection has two components, and this component is the gravity component. This is the constant pressure that keeps things together. So this photon is doing both jobs. It's being a photon, but it's also being gravity. So technically, it provides the balance force to the gravity force. So the object won't move if it's doing the gravity thing. So this object doesn't gain anything from the experience per se, except the normal balance to this other force. If you can get what I'm saying. So there's no, if that's where they're hanging on this conservation thing, it's conservation because the photon is still gravity, and it's still going to provide the function of gravity. If the photon was an extra thing, then it would be supplementing. It would be another force, and it wouldn't be gravity, and so therefore it would move this object. And then you could argue, well, that would be a conservation problem. Yeah, so that's probably maybe that helps. It gets a little tricky in what photons are capable of moving. They're capable of moving electrons. They're not really capable of moving matter. So that's what gets confusing, I think. Because the movement they're going to be providing is the same as the opposing force from the field energy. They're still just gravity. Alright. you either get it or you don't get it. Yeah. I have to do details on some of that stuff, but I mean, like I said, photons gets a little complicated in terms of when you're absorbing a photon versus reflecting a photon. And again, the reflections still count as gravity. You can't ignore the fact that they're actually hitting something that's moving. Nothing hits anything that's not moving. Except when a photon hits an electron, we could say that's not moving. But the argument is that the things inside the electron are moving. So you see what I mean? You can't get away from, all the interactions are force on force. There's no such thing really as anything else, in the sense that forces don't, alright, I don't want to say force on force because I've really made an effort to emphasize forces don't interact with forces. But the matter bits are pressure, and so you hit them, you're hitting pressure, and it's that kind of reaction. The kinetic action is that two things are moving. There's nothing that's really stagnant, and I don't know how to emphasize that in any other way. But anyway, I think throughout my videos I've made this point over and over, in the sense that I've never drawn it any other way. I never draw something stagnant. There's no stagnant interaction. There's no moving thing hitting a non-moving thing, in the sense that the quanta themselves are allowed to hit each other when the quanta are in the form of matter. But, I guess that's too complicated for people to have two forms of force, material and force. Too complicated. Alright, I'll give up then. Yeah, not really. Not likely, as they say. So, Gary Koch. One of those things. Gary with two R's. You never trust a Gary with two R's. Also, why would someone want to point out the evidence to you for the 20th time? Question mark. So again, evidence in what form? You keep saying you have this solid evidence, and I keep requesting that you show me the solid evidence, and all you people do is keep sending me to the same weak evidence. You think of 1 foot long interferometer as strong evidence of something. You think those lensing images are strong evidence of something. Fuck. I've seen the video where you deny it. There you go again. I mean, I'm just going to block you. I've seen videos where you deny it. Deny what? I haven't denied evidence. I've denied that it's strong evidence. That it's anything like a good argument for your side. I think those lensing images are a bad argument for lensing, because they don't make any rational sense. And the fact that the Wikipedia page assumes the existence of dark matter pretty much validates my point, because without dark matter they can't make it rational. You have a counter argument to that sentence? Alright, I've seen videos where you deny it, and you do it just like a flat earther does. So you can keep saying things like that, and I'll just keep saying you're doing this like a zealot, like a religious zealot defending your Pope and your Catholicism and your saints and your miracles. Same thing. The way you give your elaborate excuses. Elaborate in what way are they elaborate? And my excuse is what? My excuse is it's not understandable. It's not reasonable. There's no logic to this idea that there's somehow a circumstance, a lensing circumstance, that allows perfectly round objects to create perfectly round images, and the same exact circumstance creates just a bunch of swirly crap. The same exact mathematics creates those two different phenomena. You explain it to me. The way you give your elaborate excuses, it could be done, but it could be done for any theory or piece of evidence. I don't think it can. I mean, you don't know the difference between strong evidence and weak evidence, then, is what you're saying. So if I went through all the the full Tyrannosaurus skeleton actually in the rock, and you're looking at it. There's some way I can make some bullshit excuse for why that's not a Tyrannosaurus and he didn't live on Earth. I mean, really. So you think all evidence is of the same quality, and anybody who has and anyone who makes an accusation that some piece of evidence is weak as evidence, it doesn't fit, it's irrational, it violates the math and logic. They're therefore denying all evidence. That's all you're doing. I mean, you don't have a better argument than that. A silly accusation. Nobody is allowed to critique any evidence, because as soon as they do, you'll just point your finger and say, you're an evidence denier. Because you're not giving me the standard here. You're saying all evidence is equally strong. Right? That's the only conclusion you can draw from what you're saying. Let's see. This could be done for any theory or piece of evidence. You just choose to do it for the ones that don't support your theory. Well, again, it doesn't really have anything to do with supporting my theory. My theory doesn't give a shit about this fucking photon mass crap. I'm just saying that I would argue that the evidence is that light is a force, like magnetism, like gravity. It's not matter. And forces aren't bent by forces. So it's just a simple argument. You know. And I'm saying your theory is the one dependent on this mush. I don't even know if it's dependent, to tell you the truth. Like I said, I think Einstein way overstepped his bounds by deciding to give photons material mass, that is, gravitational mass. I think it was stupid. Clearly, just for logical reasons, like we can shoot light off the Earth and it doesn't get slowed down, and you can shoot light into the Earth and it doesn't speed up. I mean, those simple logical statements should say to you, yeah, it doesn't make sense that light would be affected by gravity. What a surprise that you never take issue with any experiment that aligns with it. I suppose he means my theory. Well, I think I've pointed out when you can't draw a conclusion where I'd like to, so I think I have been cautious. But whatever. Because the same BS excuses that, I mean the point is my theory aligns with the basic laws that are well established, like the inverse square law and like Maxwell's equations. It fits the really solid parts of physics. So I really don't need to reach for bizarre experiments. Okay, because the same BS excuse could be applied to those as well. Oh, it wasn't accurate enough. Oh, they're misinterpreting the data. Oh, well again, where did I even say that? Misinterpreting the data. I've never even said it that way. But you don't think they're capable of making a wrong assumption, especially when they're doing complex things like measuring how fast an electron is deflected by another electron in an accelerator. You know, after the accelerator explodes the bits and they fly out, and they're measuring the amount of time it takes the electron to how fast it loops somewhere, and they're assuming based on how fast it repelled that means how much mass is in this other particle or something. And you're saying they can't possibly make wrong assumptions about that hairline kind of data. Oh, okay. Oh, they just don't get it and are seeing what they want to see. So you don't think there's any confirmation bias involved, that they aren't manipulating things often for the purpose of putting their theory in the best possible light. Like when I show all the single slit images on Google Images, let's say, and there's a dominance of ones that only have the 3 little humps and that's it, when clearly this single slit experiment can look just as full of bars as the double slit. You can have 70, 80 bars in a single slit diffraction pattern, but you don't see those. Why is that? because that's the truth, or because that's that's an inconvenient truth. Yeah. Let's see, want to see. Oh, it really does this, and even though it shows that, it's because this and that really does. So again, you're not quoting anything I've said. You're not arguing with any specific argument made in my theory. You're just doing this blanket bullshit of accusations that aren't backed up with any quotes. So what the fuck is that? Oh, it looks like that, but it really this. It keeps doing the same thing. Anyone looking, then he has quote mark, but I don't know where that, I guess he was quoting the whole, so all this O stuff was me saying those things, and I didn't say any of those things. So, you just have to resort to lying and misparaphrasing me and distorting the truth. So again, you're just kind of giving me more evidence that you people are willing to compromise the truth to make your argument, to validate your theory. You're quite willing to distort what the truth is about what I've said and what I've argued because of your desperation. And you're doing it from this position that, oh, our evidence is super powerful. So you're supposed to be in the privileged position of having tons of evidence, okay, and it's really solid and the whole thing fits and it works perfect. And even from that superior position, talking to some imbecile who's just making shit up, you still can't make the argument and you have to resort to slandering me. You know, you don't see how that's just evidence how you're the pathetic ones doing the desperate zealotry. Alright, anyone looking at this even slightly objectively can see what you're doing. Well, I would argue that anybody who reads your comment with any objectivity, who has watched any of my videos and sees how you're misdescribing and misparaphrasing me, can see clearly that you have to resort to lying because you can't make an argument. You have nothing as an argument, and therefore you're just going to, you know, talk about how crookedy my hair is and think you win. Well, you don't win. You lose. You're weak. I'm strong. So Banned Science says, hey Draft Science, been enjoying your videos, but thinking a bit about your arguments on polarization. Got some decent forms starting up. Well, we'll go look, but he's got something on the Eclipse that he's selling for $3 in some sense. And there's only a day left. So, I don't know. It doesn't sound like a great businessman. You know. But whatever. I mean, you know, maybe he'll make $10. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of science for sale, but you know, whatever. Bit stupid, that comment, as they can't be current without voltage. Yes, I don't know which one that was on, but I don't know what he's talking about. So you're calling Tesla a moron. The ether does exist. So those weren't separate. That was all one pile of words with no period and no capital S. So you're calling Tesla a moron. No, I don't think I've ever called Tesla a moron. I don't think so. But Tesla was not the god of science. And his theory was clearly wrong, and he wouldn't let it go. I mean, in spite of having millions of dollars to, you know, try to make his energy ray thingy, and in spite of the fact that he kept running into the simple truth that electricity is going to go to ground. I mean, every time he was doing those big lightning bolts, what he was trying to do was make electricity fly through the air. And he couldn't seem to understand that, he didn't seem to understand what electrical potential was, and that you're never going to get it to go anywhere but the ground. Every single time. And he just wouldn't let it go. He kept thinking he could make a electric gun, you know, a big electric gun, shoot people with it. And, you know, all of us kind of understand, I think, you know, that electricity is traveling through an atmosphere. You know, not going to work. And then when you have plasma, in no atmosphere. It just floats around. Doesn't seem interested in going anywhere. It just kind of, I don't really care where I am, blah, 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 blah. So you can't make much of a gun out of that. Just didn't really understand, because he thought there was this ether thing that was making stuff go back and forth, and the ether doesn't make it happen. The energy makes it happen. Alright, so I don't know, I think that's probably, I thought there was some other subject I wanted to get into. Yeah. There's just so many problems with, like I said, the theories underlying these things, and they just keep, like I said, watching the Professor Lewin video really did piss me off, because I watched a lot of his MIT lectures, and so I did, learned a lot from him, but it was just such propaganda, it was just such a, so trite, and not to even appreciate how the original Eddington experiment was so marginal, even theoretically, to be able to do with the telescope, the equipment he had and everything else. It was a marginal possibility to start with. And he acknowledges this is what made Einstein. Overnight sensation, the whole thing. And it's sort of a bogus way for him to get there. Especially, like I said, the whole idea that the photon is time dilated and is in the gravity twice as long. That doesn't bother you, people? We know how long it's in the gravity. I mean, this time dilation is one thing when you're talking about metabolism slowing down and your clocks move slower, but a photon can't do that. A photon doesn't have any clock. It travels a straight line. It does the distance. We can count how long it takes for it to get there. It didn't do any extra distance. They even said that in that article. The curved line is the straightest path. And it's just like, that doesn't bother you when people say that? Shit. The shortest distance is the curved line. That doesn't just logically say, no, that's not 2 + 2 = 4 at all, is it? There's something wrong with that math, man. Come on. You can't say it some better way than that, because that just sounds stupid. Anyway. Enough said. So, till next time and such. I thought there was something else, but apparently it didn't show up, so I'm going to move on. Until next time.